This wide-open space in Michigan offers promise or peril. It depends on who you ask.
The Chinese government is a threat to our existence.
A proposed factory promises thousands of needed jobs, but there are strings attached to the Chinese Communist Party.
Does that concern you, or should it be of concern to the community?
I love Pennsylvania.
In the Keystone State, presidential candidates Trump and Harris are in a dead heat.
Oh, it is good to be back in Pennsylvania.
The voters who may swing the state may surprise you.
I don't think America is safe right now.
Climate justice is something that affects all of us.
Young voters turn out in higher numbers in Pennsylvania than other states, which begs the question, why do you think that is?
Artificial intelligence in the guise of deep fakes is becoming a constant and concerning part of politics.
The only question is how much impact it'll have.
Have I ever told you the story of the magical pistachio?
This week, a high-tech reality check on the latest tool to fool American voters.
Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. In Michigan, a major company is promising to build a new factory, invest billions, and bring in more than 2,000 jobs. It quite possibly could change the fortune of one of the state's poorest areas. But as badly as they may need jobs, many residents have risen up to fight the plans. And now the small township, roughly 6 miles by 6 miles, is a major focal point in a national battle over jobs and national security.
So what we're seeing is this was a pine stand, a 20-acre pine stand that was...
Chuck Thalen is showing us a desolate plot of Michigan land in Green Charter Township, an hour's drive north of Grand Rapids.
And then right here is where the buildings will start.
He'll be the general manager of a giant factory to be built by a company called Goshen to make parts for electric car batteries. It promises to bring thousands of jobs to one of the state's poorest areas. But as needed as the jobs may be, Goshen has become a national flashpoint.
Is there any Chinese ownership?
Yeah, the founder of the company, he's the second highest stockholder, so he is Chinese. But there's no ownership from the PRC or government entity. It's all private.
When you say there's no ownership by the Communist Chinese Party, we always hear that it's not possible to have a complete separate entity. If this is a business that's in China, there has to be some connection to the party and the government.
They have rules and regulations like any other country, which we abide by the rules of every country where we're at. Just theirs tend to be a little stiffer. But they do not own or operate the company.
Nonetheless, there are signs many are worried. The debate has stirred bitter sentiments and upended local politics. A year ago, voters booted Republicans who backed the Goshen plant from the town council in a special election. Jason Cruz took over as Green Charter Township supervisor.
Can you give the summary of, I called it sort of the bloodbath that happened in the election?
Well, there was a big rift that happened within the community, still pretty much exists today. I think it's kind of cooling down a little bit. As we work through some of these issues within our township and in our community, but it was a split between what they call the pro-goes and the no-goes, and for lack of better content or words.
This is as good a place as any to note that the debate doesn't divide neatly along political lines. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, a Democrat, supports the Goshen plant. So do Republicans, who controlled the state legislature when it gave Goshen hundreds of millions of dollars in incentives. Donald Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, was in Michigan during our recent visit.
Even some of the folks in Obama's administration said that the Goshen factory plant is a threat to America's national security. Even Obama's leadership. But Kamala Harris not only wants to allow the Chinese Communist Party to build factories on American soil, she wants to pay them to do it with our tax money.
Bruce Borkovich, a Republican, is running for supervisor in nearby Big Rapids Township, where worries over Chinese interests have bled over.
We have many credible, very credible sources who say that the Chinese government, not the Chinese people, we're not against the Chinese people, but the Chinese government is a threat to our existence. And in particular, if this plant is built, they are certain that it will be used to attack our cybersecurity and our intellectual property. Not likely or highly likely, they are certain that that will happen.
How do you explain the Republicans who had backed the project and subsequently got voted off the board?
So I think when this began, it was very much, wow, here's an opportunity to bring a big company and provide a lot of jobs, benefits, a real shot in the arm to the economy. But then as we drill down and think about the environmental risks, and then in particular the security risks that we've now been educated to, I don't think it belongs anywhere on American soil.
Opponents have seized upon a controversial provision in Goshen's Articles of Incorporation that Goshen's Chuck Thalen addressed.
In China, that you have to allow for the Communist Party to assemble in your place of business if you have 3 or more employees that work there that are CCP members. That's what it refers to.
Does that concern you, or should it be of concern to the community?
I've never seen or heard any ideals expressed by the management or the people working in this company. So no, it does not concern me.
Also unconcerned, Jim Chapman, another Green Charter Township official, ousted from his job over the Goshen deal. He blames unnamed outside interests for ginning up fears of foreigners.
The pressures coming in, the money coming in from outside this area is off the scale. I have in my truck a flyer, very professionally done. I'm told those things run $6,000, $8,000. For the recall last fall, there were 7, 8 of those went out. This is one of the examples, what I'm talking about. And they make a whole bunch of claims that they're leading a fight, blah, 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 blah. How do you deal with the constant accusations that are not based in fact?
Is it safe to say you think that if there wasn't some Chinese ownership, it would be a no-brainer for the town?
Oh, absolutely.
Are there any valid concerns? Do you have any concerns about China's involvement?
Of course I do. Of course I do. The Chinese Communist Party is an evil organization. All right? There is no question about that. And so, yes, that concerns me. But I started doing, I'm looking at the research, actually looking at the facts. What did I see? Goshen is owned by these companies, okay, like any other international agency. Over here, they found one company that like 1% of their stock was owned by an entity that's owned by the Chinese Communist Party. That's the closest they could come with direct connection.
At the national level, a growing number of Americans now see China as an enemy, and most say they favor reducing China's power and influence as a top foreign policy goal, according to a recent study. Concerns about China have expanded under both Trump and Biden. President Biden recently signed legislation picking up on a Trump initiative. It requires the Chinese owner of the popular social media company TikTok to sell by next spring or have TikTok banned in the U.S. for national security reasons. In Green Charter Township, Michigan, it boils down to jobs versus national security. After the recall election, the new township supervisor, Jason Cruz, and the new board tried to reverse course on the plant. Goshen sued, and a federal judge ordered them to resume the contract. What comes next is anybody's guess. What's your best guess as to what we're going to see 5 years from now?
Wow. My best guess is anything. Anything can happen at this point.
We're in the fight. If we lose, we lose. We can keep our head up, but we don't plan on losing.
What is the status of the project? Is there anything at this point that could stop it?
There's always something that could stop anything, but right now the status is moving forward. I have no idea why they're picking on us. It is truly a David and Goliath, and the Goliath is beating up on David. I feel like I'm David. We're throwing rocks and they're throwing missiles.
The township is appealing the federal order to continue the Goshen contract. When we come back, how the power of youth is wielding power in the election. It's often said that youth are architects of tomorrow's world. They just might be architects of the upcoming election. Our reporting from key battleground states continues this week in Pennsylvania with Lisa Fletcher.
In Pennsylvania, every political yard sign and campaign rally is focused on winning the support of voters who could sway a close presidential race.
Kamala wants to put massive taxes on American jobs and American industries. I want to cut taxes.
Today in America, 1 out of 3 women live in a state with a Trump abortion ban.
As the candidates make their whistle stops across the Keystone State, they're also making a strong effort to capture the attention of young voters aged 18 to 29. Here in Allentown, Pennsylvania's third largest city, we caught up with some of those young voters on opposite sides of the political spectrum. Old friends Ciara Gutierrez and Serena Torres, both politically active in Allentown, register voters and knock on doors to support Democrats and progressive candidates running in state elections. They're flocking to the trailblazing female Democrat who advocates for issues that matter to them.
Abortion rights, climate justice.
On the other side, new friends Derek on the left and Mason on the right, who didn't want to use their last names, are like many other young guys their age, drawn to Trump's tough stance on illegal immigration and solutions for economic issues.
I don't think America is safe right now with an open border policy.
Inflation. I cringe when I have to go grocery shopping.
With nearly 9 million registered voters, Pennsylvania is a state deeply divided, not only among young voters, but across all age groups. Since 1976, voters here have supported Democrats in presidential elections about 75% of the time. But most of the results were close, including Trump's razor-thin victory in Pennsylvania in 2016 and Biden's narrow win in the state in 2020. For both candidates, Pennsylvania was critical to giving them the White House. So, where do the candidates have opportunities to connect with young Pennsylvanians and swing the pendulum red or blue this year? We asked journalist Brad Bumstead, who's been covering politics in the state since the 1970s.
What makes Pennsylvania different than other swing states?
It's the diversity in Pennsylvania. You have 2 big cities, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, medium-sized cities in Allentown and Harrisburg, and it's the middle of the state up across the northern tier, and it's the very rural region of Pennsylvania that is bright red.
So it's really mixed.
It is really mixed.
What issues give Trump the best chance to connect with young voters?
I think his best shot is what he talked about with draining the swamp. I mean, I think young voters would relate to things aren't getting done in Washington. It's gridlock.
What about Harris?
Abortion by a large margin. That was the rise for Harris after Biden dropped out. And I think that continues to be important.
Issues our young voters in Allentown connect with.
I want to make sure that my daughter and the future generations have reproductive freedoms.
Climate justice is something that affects all of us, regardless of color, age, gender. So that's why I'll be supporting Kamala in this upcoming election.
We've already had terrorists and countries that don't get along with the United States cross our border as well. And that's my biggest concern. So that's what drew me to Trump, with being hard on illegal immigration.
During his first term, I was like a teenager. He reduced the amount of taxable income for married families. Now that I'm an adult, I have my own house and all that stuff. That's something that I would want to see again.
Since 2016, young men like Mason and Derek have cooled on the Democratic Party, with support dropping from 51% to 39% by 2023, according to a recent poll. Meanwhile, the number of young women identifying as liberal has increased, rising from 36% to 40%. The question is, will enough young voters in Pennsylvania turn out to sway the presidential election? The high water mark for the youth vote was set back in 2008, when a nationwide surge of young voters helped Democrat Barack Obama beat Republican John McCain.
Statistically, young voters turn out at higher rates in Pennsylvania than they do in other states across the country. Why do you think that is?
Pennsylvania, youth are extremely well educated. You have more, top universities in Pennsylvania than most other states. So I think, educated voters tend to be more willing to vote because they want to try to, influence the issues that they care about.
A message that these young voters can rally behind.
We have to go out and vote.
Prompter
Go out
can
and
go
vote.
to tease.
You have to organize to get the young folks out.
Go out and vote this November.
You mentioned that the youth vote was kind of off the charts in 2008.
Yeah.
What does it look like for the swing states in 2024?
Well, Tufts University does very detailed research on this, and they rank which states young people are going to wield the most influence. And it turns out the states that have the most active young voters are also the states on the razor's edge. Young voters in Michigan are expected to most shape the 2024 election, followed by Wisconsin and then Pennsylvania.
Wow, going to go down to the wire, it looks like.
It is, yeah.
Thanks a lot, Lisa. And ahead on Full Measure, this scene may look real, but it never happened. Deep fakes of the 2024 campaign. Up next. Artificial intelligence is advancing faster than the speed of light, it seems, and a majority of Americans say they're concerned about realistic deep fakes impacting the election. Here's Scott Thuman.
Perhaps it is a measure of just how close this election is, or how divided the nation has become. Throughout the campaign season, AI-generated fake videos and images have proliferated.
Have I ever told you the story of the magical pistachio? I got lost in the grocery store and couldn't find my way out.
Sometimes the aim is to amuse, but mostly the idea is to mislead voters or throw a wrench into the wheels of democracy, as happened last January in New Hampshire when a robocall with a voice sounding like President Biden appeared to tell voters to skip the state's primary election.
Voting this Tuesday only enables the Republicans in their quest to elect Donald Trump again.
The political consultant who allegedly created that call was later indicted for deterring people from voting. To better understand deep fakes, we had a Zoom call with Oren Etzioni in Seattle, an AI expert. He's launched a website that uses human and computer tools to inspect files for telltale signs of AI generation.
Hi, this is Tim.
Like this one recently of a fake call between Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
Listen, you weren't my first choice.
You know, we throw around that phrase deep fake because we understand it, but I'm not sure the average person understands just how big or wide that scope is. Explain to someone who's never heard of a deep fake why they should.
When you see an image or a video, we're visual animals. It's natural to say, okay, I see this with my own eyes. I believe it. Unfortunately, we've reached the point where AI is sophisticated enough that it's easy to fake these images, to fake these videos so that they look real, but they're not.
Scenes that look unlikely, like President Trump hugging Dr. Anthony Fauci, can still look convincing. In this case, in a video attacking President Trump's decision not to fire Anthony Fauci.
Today I walk in, I hear I'm going to fire him. I'm not firing him. I think he's a wonderful guy.
Peter Loge is director of the Project on Ethics in Political Communication at George Washington University in the nation's capital.
The real downside of this, though, is because we're all afraid of AI, because there's so much stuff, anybody following these campaigns is looking at a wall of noise. We don't know what's true, what's not, what's fake, what's not fake, what the candidates are saying, what people are pretending, so maybe we don't believe any of it.
Loge says the big campaigns have largely avoided AI for their advertising and videos because of the risk of being called out. But smaller campaigns and foreign actors seeking influence can have a large impact without spending much. So if you or I had malicious intent, and we wanted to alter the way people saw a candidate in this election, it wouldn't take much.
It wouldn't take much. It would take a few dollars. We're not even talking about $100. We're just talking about a few dollars and existing tools.
Leaving voters to wonder if what they've seen and heard over the campaign is real.
And that's how I found my way out of the grocery store, all thanks to the magical pistachio.
Or a sophisticated con.
Today is today.
For Full Measure,
And yesterday was today yesterday.
I'm Scott Thuman.
Tomorrow will be today tomorrow.
And after a break, one European country makes a new drastic move to stem illegal immigration. An update to our reporting on the illegal immigration crisis in Europe. Poland recently announced a temporary ban on foreigners from claiming asylum after they crossed the border illegally from neighboring Belarus. In an exclusive interview with Full Measure over the summer, Polish President Andrzej Duda described a border invasion orchestrated by Russia starting in 2021 and meant to destabilize Poland and Europe. In 2021, analysts say, Russia began trafficking multitudes of people from the Mideast and North Africa through Russian ally Belarus into Poland, enticing them with the promise of free benefits in Europe. In a rare sit-down interview, Poland's President Andrzej Duda told us the Russians intend for it to create instability and chaos.
If someone comes over to Poland in the false perception that one will stay here and get everything for free and will have a better life without working, well, we do not agree to such arrivals. No, if you want to live among us, work. You want to live among us, get yourself moving and do some work, earn some money. This is as simple as that.
In May, a mob of illegal immigrants threw knives and spears through Poland's border fence, murdering a 21-year-old Polish soldier and injuring several others. Poland's parliament quickly passed a new law allowing border guards to use live ammunition. Italy just announced plans to send illegal immigrants to Albania, where their asylum claims will be managed remotely, similar to former President Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, which the Biden administration halted. Coming up on the next Full Measure, we continue our reporting from Europe, where the mass numbers of immigrants over the past decade have caused a political upheaval and given rise to a movement.
How strong is the movement that's called populism?
It varies from country to country, but certainly in Europe, in Italy, in France, and increasingly in Germany.
Growing populist sentiment influencing politics around the world. Next week on Full Measure. Until then, I'll see you on my podcast, Full Measure After Hours. Thanks for watching. I'm Sharyl Attkisson.